their music? Would you say there's a
I don't think it's a question of style so much, but what has come up is a question of weight for not having such a weighted thing. Although in discussions with ballet teachers, so to find out that a presumption of mine that they didn't want weight was incorrect. But I think the preconceived idea is that the ballet has to be lighter and off the floor more so that there's a less weighted approach to playing the piano. But that is not always true if you really talk to the person you're working with and it's trying out.
It's also, I think, a lot of
Make an artificial tone, or just simply make a succession of rhythms that were interesting, and then write them down the page like this, also they're all the same, and then make the melody. And I chose, as a matter of fact, that half note, whole note mode, eighth note mode, and wrote all of them in the same mode, of course. And some of them have tunes of different kinds and different registers. One of them goes up all the way to the flute, goes all the way up to the top, and another one comes down from the top too, so that they can be connected in this way. Many of the tunes can be repeated on 2 or 3 levels too. And then I wrote for percussion an abstract, say 3 or 4 lines, and I think I asked for tambourines in the top 2 and then simply drums for the bottom 2. And this is for a single percussionist. And it also conforms to the same tall, so it's the same rhythmical structure. Any one of the melodies can be repeated or connected with any one of the other of them. And also the same thing is true of the percussion. And they can also be omitted or repeated in any order. Well, the dancer organized a piece out of that. And actually there was a beginning piece because I called it Ariadne. And it was Ariadne abandoned, and that's a solo like an Indian piece. And then the Jalas or the Tal starts. And the flute player and the dancer organize what they wanted. They get excited here and so on. So this is all provided for in writing. And so it's been done a number of times. It's coming up, being done. It's been recorded 2 or 3 times in different versions too. And
Okay, so the camera's on, and here's Beth.
Hi, Eva. I can't imagine going to London and being in the fog and cold, rain and wind. When you could have been here. Have you seen the weather? Have you gotten a clip of the weather? 65 degrees, perfect sunny skies, not a cloud anywhere. And we're having a great time. We wish you were here.
Okay.
It's to Eva already.
Oh, you already told Eva?
Yeah, I've already.
Really lucky to have these 2 men here. The best thing probably for me to do is to just try to get them to say as much as they can within an hour and a quarter, an hour and a half, and let us all go back home and think about words of wisdom. I think I'm here because I wrote and worked with Louis Horst, and I know you guys know who he was. And my reference when I was writing about Louis, trying to figure out how he brought together his materials and his points of view, was actually it was interesting because every once in a while he'd mention Percy Getchus. Remember Percy Getchus? The homophonic forms, I think 1898. That was the Bible, I assume, when Louis was studying composition. I think until he met Wallingford Rieger and then started studying at the ripe age of 40 or something with Wallingford. And I just heard you all, David said to Lou, by the way, did you know Wallingford Rieger? What was the answer?
Yes.
Did you study with him? Did you study with him, Lou?
No, we were friends. They were very good friends in the Cowles, and Cowles and I were very good friends, so I had all the Cowles friends. We went around.
Well, it seems to me...
Program is that we have a visual artist, Dee Sparrow, who is going to be doing her work, improvising to the improvisations that are happening on stage. What you also will see, if we find the right adapters, will be her work projected on that wall. So somewhere between now and the end of the program, that should happen. I'd like to remind you that tomorrow afternoon at 3:30 at the Physical Education East building, where the dance department has its offices, there will be a percussion procession led by C.K. Gagno and his group Azido. That will wind through campus and approach this building from Mill Avenue heading towards the museum for the performance of Sound Dance, which is a site-specific piece that has been commissioned by composer David Karaganis, who is recording this concert, and Elina Mooney, who is working with ASU dancers.
Strong and weak. 1, 2, 1, 2. Generally, tarantella, you know tarantella, I think to American people, to tourists, like Neapolitan dance. No, tarantella is coming from the ancient Greek land, very ancient civility, about from 3,000 of years ago. Really. And tarantella comes from a southern region of Italy called Puglia, Apulia in the ancient name from Latin language. Tarantella is an original dance from the bite of a spider called tarantula, Latin name, tarantula. So, tarantella is the Italian name from little tarantula, little spider. This is the real name, not the city from Taranto. No, this is another thing. Tarantella is coming from tarantula, from a spider. And tarantella means really in Italian language, little spider.
Basis because they joined the two classes for budgetary reasons and time reasons. And there's a lot of value in having a dancer being able to accompany their own class. I know that sounds subversive in a group like this. It sounds like we're putting you out of work. And yet the ability to keep a beat going and phrase it the way you want to while you're giving directions and instructions not only integrates you more with the musicality and the importance of it in class, but it makes the teacher have greater respect for what the accompanist does. If you've ever seen Alwyn Nikolai teach a master class, you know that he gets up there with 3 or 4 drums and a cymbal, and he plays incredibly understated accompaniment. It's really these dry sounds, little accents, and he talks and hums and sings and keeps his directions going. But every time I hear him accompany, or every time I heard him accompany, I go back and say to myself, am I overplaying? Am I trying to add too much sound to the dance class to support the dancers at the expense of them finding the musicality in their own bodies? And so we continue to teach at least 5 weeks of the dancers having to keep basic beat and talk at the same time, which is a bit of a trick, but we have various tools for getting at that. The question that's raised in my mind, and it's something that I want to bring up today before we get to play, which is really the purpose of this class, is to get those butts off the benches and get you up and actually playing some Brazilian samba. Is it possible, after, say, the age of 12, thank you, or even after the age of 9, to teach musicality to dancers? And I'm asking that question rhetorically because I don't have a ready answer, and I keep asking it each year as I get started in classes like this. And if there's anybody here that's had success or failure doing that, I'd love to hear an anecdote or 5.
You know, I guess one question is have trouble counting rhythms and all that, right? And they're dismissed as unmusical. But I haven't found that to be the case. I found that those dancers sometimes really capture the quality of the music in their dancing, even though they might have trouble actually, getting steps in.
They can't teach it. They can't codify it in their mind. In a way, it's similar to being able to count, and yet they are masters of the instrument.
They used to think the counts were the rhythm. Realize they had to separate those two. So it's just it's priceless to have music young. Like my daughter, watch my daughter's musicality. It's amazing. She's had it day in, day out since birth. So I'm glad for her, and I'm not sure we can replace that. At least for some growth.
Human beings are underrated for their capacity to grow and change. I think it's more and more difficult as time goes on because people are more and more set in their patterns of life and everything, and how much energy they're willing to devote to change becomes less and less, and that's more the issue than their capacity for it. But I think the real problem for me has always been the lack of it's always a struggle to find the magic word that's going to communicate the idea to the person. And sometimes I've seen it happen more often dancer to dancer than musician to dancer, because when they use the same language with one another, and when they can see it, they're so much more visually oriented than orally oriented or even language oriented. And so when they can see it in a person's body, sometimes they can find it and imitate it and be able to reproduce it.
That's an understanding of time and musicality and awareness in our own accompaniment. But there is a factor, and I found asking most of the students who have been musical dancers what their environment was when they grew up, and most of them grew up in a household where there was music, if not musicians, and music that covered a broad spectrum. Mariah Malik, who's a graduate student here and was an original member of my samba ensemble in Salt Lake City, has a real rhythmic accuracy in what you had tap or...
Yeah, I grew up with jazz and tap, and my parents were very good about letting me listen to a lot of different things growing up.
I personally feel that tap should be a required course in all music departments, because when you get the rhythm started in the feet, it's going to travel up the body and go out the top of the head. So, in this class called Rhythmic Analysis, Percussion Accompaniment, after a number of years of teaching it just as a course in which people learn to read and write, identify rhythms, and then play some simple drum patterns, I realized that there wasn't really enough hands-on experience of making rhythms that were a little bit more complex. And having been to Brazil and having a long love affair with Brazilian music and particularly Brazilian samba, I decided to gather together a bunch of instruments and see if I could teach it as a component of the class. We didn't do it every day, or certainly not for the whole class, but we did do it enough so that there began to be some interest. And as I said, Mariah was one of the founding members, and it became a group on its own. Now it's called Samba Gringa because mostly white, mostly women, and for a time, given Salt Lake City, it was mostly Mormon, and I have punched that perhaps it was the only almost all white, almost all female, almost all Mormon samba band. A year or two. Yeah. In Rio, we can do it in Stockholm. Okay. So, from the call. da-da-da-da-da, bam, but you're still going, or okay?
copyrighted music publications and recordings is, one, unclear, both in terms of law and in terms of process, who to contact, etc. Boozy and Hawks does have a very handy brochure, which I'm sure many of you have seen. No? Lynn Liston has copies of them, okay? It's very helpful many times. Good research scholars could spend some valuable time examining the symbiosis of dancers and musicians. In this relationship between composers and choreographers, if there are any obligations to be considered, I believe that just as we dancers have been continually inspired by the musicians, it is the composer fraternity that has incurred a tremendous debt to the choreographers. If you examine the program of modern dancers from its programs, you will notice that the names of composers who became well known and performed by often by orchestras after their work for dancers. Oh, I'm sorry, I can't see. Can anyone read this? It's just my eyes are tired. Yeah.
What follows is being dashed off without the research and thought the subject deserves. Okay. In this relationship between composers and choreographers, if there are any obligations to be considered, I believe that just as we dancers have been continually inspired by the musicians, it is the composer fraternity that has incurred a tremendous debt to the choreographers. If you examine the programs of modern dancers from its beginnings, you will note the names of composers who became well known and performed often by orchestras after their work for dancers. Aaron Copland scores for Graham and DeMille date from 38 to 42. Graham was using Scriabin in 1927, Schoenberg, Cowell, and Perez in 34, Millot, Hindemith in 1944. Ballet commissions at the start of his career put Stravinsky on the world stage of musicians.
Put Stravinsky.
Yes.
Ballet put him on.
Yes, I'm reading it. That is. At this moment, there are dance students all over the country preparing for their choreography classes or their senior concerts using the music of barely known composers or little-known labels. It is important to know that they have good taste and that many of these composers will be getting some of their first public exposure, which, for some, will lead to national prominence. We are among the first to use and bring into public awareness the music of composers such as Bela Bartok, Perez, and Henry Cowell. Finally, we have no money to speak of. Even the major modern dance companies, who have significant tours and major funding, constantly live on the bitter edge of not being able to make it. Small independent dance companies, college dance events, licensing, royalties, economically it is flat out impossible. Ethically, the composers owe the choreographers, but speaking for that debt, we make a wave of the hand and say, forget it. Daniel Hickman.
And is this, no. For some reason, I was thinking this was the final session, but no, it's not over yet. The next session is exploration of the beat, presented by Daniel Nagrin.
Well, first off, I have to thank you for last night. That was one of the best evenings I've ever spent in theater. It was a moment that was full of delight and surprise. And the better you got, the more frightened I got. The whole outrageousness of my standing before you and discussing rhythm, it's pretty far out. But I put my foot into it, so here goes. Quite a long time ago, in fact, there's an importance. I was teaching a jazz class at Carnegie Hall, and they had given me an accompanist. I didn't know the young man. And every time I would give, he would go, why are you speeding up on me all the time? Oh, I'm sorry. And all through the class, there would be this jump. So when the class was over, I said, "Can we have some coffee? We really have to talk, because if you're going to work with me, we have to understand each other. What I demonstrate is what you have to do, and you're constantly getting ahead of me." We had coffee. He says, "I'm starting to work with a bop group." See, and bop, none of us play on the beat except the bass. It used to be the drummer would go choop-a-choop-a-choop-a-choop, and everybody else would play around the rhythm. Now it's the bass, because everybody in the orchestra could hear the bass, but a lot of people in the audience can't. And we're all learning to jump the beat. This is brand new. that time to now. The number of choreographers, the number of musicians. Nobody ever brought this matter up. And it was only a few years ago, I don't know, about 10 years ago, I heard a discussion about early music. And someone was saying, anybody who plays what they read in early music is not playing early music. And I think there was a discussion on both sides about certain things that were supposed to be chum. And he said, it'll never be music you play at what you read there on the score. So that began to rattle my head. Then it came a time I began to teach my solos. And somebody would do, I'd say, hey, you're on the beat. It's on 2, see? It's on 2. And he'd go, da. I said, no, it's on 2. It's on 2. It's on 2. I suddenly heard myself. And I realized it's one of the reasons I was probably quite successful on Broadway. I was ahead of the beat most of the time. And if you're ahead of the beat, you bring news. Anybody else who does the same movement is not going to be seen. You're going to be seen. Which counts for the characteristic aggressiveness of Broadway performance that explains that energy. And if you don't, forget it. And not that I wasn't right. What mystifies me, every one of you knows what I'm talking about. And what I want to know, is there a conspiracy of silence? Don't you talk to the dance teachers? Somebody give me just a beat like, you've gone through some bop. Anybody give me. I want to hear bop, bop, beat, beat, bop. I was in the music, wasn't I? Huh? Yeah. It's terrible. And that's the kind of a beat which many dancers do in class, and no teacher ever says anything about it. And that's the kind of a beat that's characteristic of someone who is learning how to dance on the corner of their eye to know what comes next. You have to be behind the beat because you watch the person who knows. See? So you have to. what you got is not something that can be ignored. It's not something where you can sit there as a class is going, and half the class is going, yeah, to, yeah, to, the, and the Broadway kid is going, bop, boom, beep. And the whole class is just utter. I saw Kenneth McMillan rehearsing 4 young women. And he was so nitsy-fitsy. He was doing a little thing with him going, I don't know what it was. And he was going over details that just not to be believed. One young woman was significantly behind the beat. He never said a word. He never picked up on that at all. I'm talking about something that's serious. It's not musical. So I'll play games. And the point is, before, after, on, is not, no one of them is right. I'll play. Behind the beat can be a metaphor for being swept along by the music. Behind the beat can be a metaphor of being battered by the music. Behind the beat can be a metaphor for weakness. Or 10,000 other things that your imagination will discover. On the beat, John Philip Sousa Ethel Mermentine. Heard him where they ha! He's like your wind. You're in the center. You're at the right. You're right. And ahead of the beat, you're a little crazy. You're a Broadway dancer, you want to attract attention. You're making the music, you're forcing the music out of your body. Your body creates the sound. Ding! You're playing the piano. You have an upbeat before you. Before we hear the sound, you have touched the key. Then after a while there's the sound of that. And these microcosmic crumbs of time that are so significant. And it isn't as if you are one or the other. You can do things like this. Within a measure, you can get ahead of it, drag it, and so forth. In fact, that's what makes jazz. That's what makes musicality. And when you say a certain dance is musical, that's a dance that has utterly flexible, responsive use of music, living with music, before, after, and on, and with no rigidity. As soon as you get into rigidity, you're a poor dancer, a poor musician. You get stuck with any of those things. Of course, you know, the beat, the musical, that's not music. I don't have a lot more to say, except I want to talk about something entirely different now that I have could I hear from you? Is there anything you want to add, or contradict, or tell me to lay off and I've done?
Well, just to say that, the classical definition of rubato from the Romantic period has to do with this same issue, that, you have to have that total flexibility in the melodic line. Sometimes you're rushing, sometimes you're slowing
rubato
down.
is different. I'm not talking about rubato. Rubato is where you slow the tempo down.
No, it's speeding up or slowing down.
You can speed up or slow
can
down.
get ahead.
You can be ahead or behind.
Speed up or slowing down. I'm talking about dancing against a strict rhythm. How do you...
In the classical definition of rubato, you're supposed to keep the rhythm absolutely strict in the left hand, and it's only that melodic line that, just like the dancer's feet, they can be ahead or behind the beat. Of course, it's not the way it's usually done, but that's what they said about it.
Most of the romantics ignore what you just said completely.
You're right.
Yeah. So whenever I've heard the word rubato, I assume that tempo actually slowed or speeded up. What you just said is news to me.
Me too.
All those people are bad.
But don't quote me on it.
Stylistic liberty.
Yeah, Wonderland does. Yeah, didn't you? She really played around with it, didn't she? Yeah. Yes, sir.
Yesterday, we were watching them doing some exercises, and someone made the comment that a 3 helps to fill out the beat more, and it occurred to me when you were dancing right on the beat, it felt to me that it wasn't being filled out. Did anyone else get that impression? That it was so square that you were just going from point to point, and you couldn't, I had no sense of what was in between.
I wouldn't generalize. I mean, like I say, and I'll repeat myself, you're looking at the remnants of dance. And it's possible to be square on the beat and be magnificent. Music. What you just said, I don't buy. It's a generalization. But I can remember seeing a videotape of Murray, gorgeous white costume, and dancing, doing pas de deux with courtiers all around. I don't know, I'm sure all of you have seen it one time or another. He is attacking the beat with such bravo and vigor and energy. And she's dragging behind all the time. Once in a while, she'll get a leg up at the same time. It is not uncommon, this era. It's happening all the time. And I really think somehow, how many of you have ever spoken to a dance teacher in an educated way about something? Huh? What? How many of you have educated a dance teacher about it? Oh, good. Good. Today I have seen very little. And I see dance classes that are rhythmically soggy and muddy and so forth.
Well, part of your point is that you need to be aware of what your choice is, right? I mean, part of the problem is that people aren't even aware that they're doing one or the other.
Right.
Right.
See, now, I have learned that I'm teaching my
I have to relate that when I was a beginning accompanist, frequently I would look at the dancers to try to find the best rhythm, and generally I'd be looking at the better dancers or the best dancer, and they noticed that I was speeding up, and I think what I'd do is I'd adjust to a dancer who was ahead of, and what I would be doing is I'd be adjusting to a dancer who was ahead of the beat, and then I'd catch up to them, and then they'd get ahead of the beat again. And I'd catch up to them, and then they'd get ahead again. And the whole thing was going faster and faster.
That's the story of all young accompanists,
What
because they have made the era of accepting the term of accompanist. And this is one term that you as an organization want to outlaw.
We did. That's why they killed the dance musicians.
Right. Because as I say to my pianist, when I work in class, I said, when I'm giving the exercise, I'm God. That's it. The minute I say and, you're God. You have to take over and make them do what you saw me do. You make them do it. Don't follow them. Push them. Control them. Kick them in their ass and get them off the ground. That's the kind of energy you need. So you did get rid of the word? Yeah. Anything else?
One thing that came up yesterday was also the fact that when we are watching a movement combination, several of us could perceive the beat in a different way.
It's a big world.
That's true. That's one of the nice things about watching each other play.
And that's why a perfectly good dance teacher and a perfectly good musician don't get on. Because there's a sensitivity that is at odds with each other.
But that's also what makes it a hard thing to teach, because in young musicians, you're talking about something that's very subtle, and in young musicians,
Could you repeat the last sentence of subtle, the word subtle?
you're talking about something that's very subtle.
Yeah.
So that with young musicians, just to be able to get them to hear those differences is quite a task. To go also to deal with young dancers and to get them to see the way in which they use their bodies, because it's also something that's really particular to the way in which they live and breathe. And I think it's also how people perceive time.
Right.
Aside from the subtlety of also being able to delineate all those little variations within beats, how do you teach students about that?
I bang them on the head.
I think everybody here does that too. Same approach.
No, when it comes to rhythm, I'm not nice.
That's a dirty thing.
I just can't stand it. You know, there's just so much you can take. And being kind is being cruel.
That's true, absolutely.
You're doing nobody a favor by letting them get away with slovenly. Yes.
How do you relate what you've been talking about to just simple jumping? Because I think many of my colleagues will also agree with me that even in a very simple jumping exercise, you'll see dancers who are in the air when they're supposed to be on the ground and all that. I mean, it looks like Mexican jumping beats, and you know. Do you have
That's the responsibility of teaching. And what I have found very few teachers recognize that if you take the simple case of changement, that the beat should be in the air to get people up in the air. Because if the beat is on the ground, you spend too much time on the ground. Cheer bop, cheer bop, cheer bop. Instead of Jupiter, Jupiter, Jupiter. And what confuses me, and is a slight contradiction in all of this, in most modern dance classes, run, run, leap, and the beat is up in the air. Run, run, leap. Ballet classes tend to have the beat bum, bum, teen, and yet they've got marble acceleration, so I don't know. Life is not simple, I'm sorry. I can't simplify it for you. But in ballet, is it true ballet? Much of this beat is down on the floor, not up in the air. That's what I see.
Yeah, but they have them above.
But whatever. Does that answer you at all, sir?
Yes.
Yeah, yeah.
Yes, thank you.
Oh, the beat is the moment that you're leaving the ground, not the moment that you're landing on the ground. The grounded ones think they're going down on the beat and up on the upbeat.
Yeah.
But the beat is, as you say, getting them off the
Uh-huh,
ground.
uh-huh.
I know a teacher who stops them and says, "You're making me sick," and she gets very, "I'm getting seasick because you're all going up and down at different times."
Yeah. Well, we're getting close to a technical problem. Most of the great jumpers take shallow pliés. Balanchine didn't even want his people to put their heels down. While some powerhouses like Andre Levsky used to go, boom, like a plie like this. And then the son of a bitch would just go up and stay there. And he wouldn't even, see, I learned something about jumping from Ernst Cunningham and a man named Leon Danedian. Both of them in expert elevation. And I was in their classes and I got behind them. And I said, oh. And I'm losing my point. Oh, Gillespie. But Gillespie was one of the strongest men I ever danced. And he would take off from a really deep plie and just go flying. So, we're in a complexity. Anyone who tries to clarify everything and simplify it is throwing mud in the whole situation. I want to make a comment about conversation, which I saw a lot. And what I am going to say now is self-serving. There's one thing. Most of you were just fooling around. And that was the tenor of the evening. But an awful lot of improvisation. Music about music. An awful lot of music is music about music. Now, from where I stand, music is one of 10,000 possibilities to make music about. That there is a whole universe around music which many musicians pay no attention to, none whatsoever. The origin of music, I assume, and guess, and most of you assume, was created by people who were worried. Who might have to go out and fight the next day and get killed. And their music helped them do something that stupid is to go out and find And they made music to seduce someone for whom they had the hearts. And they made music when the crops were growing slowly and they were in danger. I can imagine that some of those flute players on the bone would sometimes get a little delighted by this note and that note, and have some fun doing it. So I'm not belittling what Mozart did. But when you improvise, there is a range of possibilities which you don't explore. And I wrote a book about it. It's called Dance in a Specific Image. One of the wounds of my life was that I've never been able to work consistently with a group of musicians who would be committed to trying the improvisation structures that I developed with the work. And these were structures that were about you to me. And you already have an attitude, yes? Right? And there's a way you could act on it, huh? Could it be done in music? Could you do a piece of music about what you'd like to see happen to me? Huh? That's what music's about. One of the things we've got there, I think you don't exploit it when you improvise. You're wonderful. You do the most basic, decent, lovely human thing. You listen to each other. I mean, and that is the beginning of sweetness, is to listen to each other. You don't say anything. And you don't hear what anyone else is saying. Just listening to ba-ba-ba-doo-ba, ba-da-ba-ba-doo-ba. Your keen rhythm, your wonderful rhythmic sensibilities, and you find just the place where you can speak your little ba-ba-da-da-ra, ba-ba-ba-ba-ra, and see, and you fit right in and you're in ecstasy. But you don't know that the person next to you may be dying. Or in love, or you're in love, or you're dying. Pay any attention to that when you may music. I got nothing against music, but I'm disturbed by how little attention you pay to what's outside your music. And I'm sure what I'm saying is very untrue about a lot of it. But an awful lot of music I hear is about music, and you know that. I just recorded a long thing by John Adams, and I said, wow, this may be great. His ingenuity with Phrygian and Lydian modes. You should read the program notes. What is it about obscure artists who have the longest program notes of everybody? You know, that's bullshit. They create these things, and then their programs are 6 pages long, explaining what we should be hearing and experiencing. Instead, they lead us, see, 6 more. So, I have a book called Dance and a Specific Image, and it has 10 pages that are devoted to you, where I have extracted the improvisation exercises that musicians do with musicians. recited this wonderful, next week, hey buddy, I'm sorry, I just loved it when I got a gig. And I began to learn you can't work with musicians unless you pay them. It's possible. Because they're always getting gigs. And the thing fell apart. Every time I started, it would fall apart. So I never started up again. Unless somebody gives me nice, bluntly, and I say to 7 or 8 musicians, I'm going to pay you for 3 months. You do what I tell you. I won't tell you what to play. I'll just give you a place, a relationship, a situation. I'm going to record you and see, can we make good music out of improvisation? Not inventive music. I mean, we've got, tuition and invention, and ingenuity, and virtuosity. Ingenuity, virtuosity. All you have to do is work on it. But there's more than that. We need more from you. And to make it palatable, I offer the book.
If I forgot anything, I'll let you know, but I think I... Bye-bye. Is Charlene down there?
It's a,
Okay, I think we're about ready to begin. If I could get everyone's attention and get everybody to come on in. I'm John Mitchell. This is Rob Lovell. We're the co-creators and directors of this space, which is called the Intelligent Stage Research Lab here at the Institute for Studies in the Arts. Most of our work is focused on an initiative within the Institute that we call Interactive Media and Human Performance. I say most because we all do things sort of in all areas of the Institute. That's one of the sort of basic tenets of this place is that people do a lot of cross-disciplinary types of activity. I think that what we like to do is start with a little short performance that will demonstrate some of the things that go on here. At that point, then we'll talk a little bit about what happened, and I hope that we can have some opportunity to let some people go up and try some things themselves. Okay? So, you. how's that? Was okay?
No, I'm calling cues, lighting cues and sound cues. And if the sensor back here, in this area here, is a cue.
Every time we would do a somersault.
So I do a somersault through there. Apparently I got there one too many times.
Yeah, but I'd rather start at the beginning rather than
Yeah, let's
jump
start
into
there.
an explanation that you haven't been prepared to understand.
So what did you just see is the question.
Basically, what we work with here is movement sensing research that's video-based. If you look around, you'll see cameras. There's 3 cameras that we're using in this particular setup. Rob will explain, I think, in as much detail as you would like, how the computer uses those cameras to see the space. But basically, I'll abbreviate it for now. The computer looks at the space and can tell, gather information about what's going on in the space, then can pass that information along to controller computers, such as the one that's generating the score, controlling the audio mixer and the lighting. And then, by moving through choreography, the performer is able to actually perform that score.
Are you using Big Eye?
No.
So what
What is Big Eye?
Oh, it's a program from Stein that does what you're talking about with video recognition of a field, and then you map in whatever sectors into MIDI events or algorithmic.
The program's called Eyes, which I developed here.
Eyes?
And it's a video-based sensing system.
Yeah.
And what I'm really doing is trying to get ways of using computer intelligence in the arts, and specifically in performance. And Eyes, which is the program I wrote, becomes the senses of the computer. And the electronic media becomes the dexterity. So this dexterity includes lights, sound, music, video switching, and intelligent lights, robotics, anything that's electronic.
Yeah, anything that's serial controllable is relatively easy to link into the system. I mean, there are always issues to deal with, but in the past I think we've done about 5 full stage performances. And one of the things that separates our system from many others that are out there being used by composers is that we work primarily with dancers and we work in full stage environments. So it's a fairly large area to try and get under control. And I think that's the big challenge for us. Now, I say we've done 5 full stage performances. There's a photo of the Montanaro piece out there. You're welcome to pick up these Create magazines and talk to someone about some of the things we've done. And in those performances, we've done things like control laser disc players, lighting, sound, robotic lighting like control games, animations.
You noted that there was a sensor spot right there. About how many were there?
There, in this particular environment, I think there are 33 sensors. 23? 30.
And they're not on the floor. This is all
No,
in space.
the way this works is that I use multiple cameras. There's 3 cameras in space right now. And let me describe the sensing, and I'll answer your question as I describe it. Okay, so there's different ways of sensing what's out in space. The most simple way is to look in video and look at how the light changes in video. So what I'm doing is a demarcating area of one video in one image plane where light and dark things are happening. And I'm looking for the presence or absence of something. Another thing I can do with that is I can look at the amount of motion that's happening in that field. So it's really not velocity, it's the amount of, it's a correlation between surface area and velocity. Then I add another dimension by adding another image plane. So you have 2 areas demarcated in each image. Then those come out as rays from the camera. Where they intersect represents where the sensor is in space. So there's, in this space here, there's 3 sensors, low, medium, high here. There's sensors along each of these, over each of these dots. There's 3 sensors here on this corner. There's 3 back here. There's 3 over that dot. There's 3 here. There's 3 over that dot. There's sensors right here going across. There's a sensor right here.
Yeah, maybe now I can jump in and talk a little bit about how that relates to the score. So you all probably noticed that over here is actually what we refer to as a single event trigger, where every time he hits this particular spot, that gong sound occurs, okay. Then the other sensors are not as sort of clear to see. For example, the somersault sensor in the back would actually step through cues that would control the audio mixers and the lighting. So he would go back there to send the mixer into the next cue, which would change the balance of the instruments that were playing. He had there were 5 different sensors that represented tables of intervals that were being selected, would be stepped through in real time. So if you hit call table 1, it would step through a series of interval changes from, it was 127 notes long, basically. So that would activate the sound. Then up here in the front was a sensor that would take them to a new environment that had different sounds and had different tables. And that was the more piano marimba kind of sound. He could step through that, and then he could turn that off and go to this cue. So he had a fairly tight kind of schedule of things to do. I mean,
It doesn't see my black pants and black shirt. So it's really just seeing your t-shirt, and my hands and my feet. Do you have to program everything, or is it just okay situation? This particular performance, I didn't get to turning off the pianos and to a droning section, which is the answer I went too far forward. Or I might not have done a gong over here, or I might have done something over here. So you can improvise within the structure. Yeah, you can improvise within the structure. But you couldn't call other sounds that weren't already set. You could change patches if you wanted while you're on stage, while I'm on stage. The question, it becomes a design issue. What do you really want to do? Do you want to be able to change the sounds halfway through the composition, or do you want to see what you have?
So you consider a composition of what you have some flexibility.
This is the blue camera. It's coming into this blue signal. That's the red camera. This is the green camera.
Okay.
And each, you can see it's kind of blue up here, upper left, and green here. This is the red area, but you don't have to see it. And these sensors in combination with each other create three-dimensional sensors. So if I'm in 2 of those sensors, then that sensor is active. The 2 happen to be corresponding to each other.
So each camera has different areas that are function as sensors.
Right.
What would your other option be in terms of sensing if you didn't have, I mean, in other words, if you consider infrared sensing?
We've done infrared ultrasonics to a certain extent. I mean, it's a structural form, and there's parts that can be set. But I want to be able to have the ability to change these, because otherwise it makes no difference whether somebody else out there is controlling it or you're controlling it. It does make a difference. In what way? What we found is it does make a difference in performers' attitude on stage. They're forced to be in the moment rather than somewhere else. They have to concentrate on what they're doing. They have to pay attention.
It changes
Which is
the
not,
nature of
which is, it changes the nature of the way a performer behaves. I mean, it's a subtle thing. Grant, the audience is not normally aware of it. But I feel that it changes the performer's attitude, their experience on stage.
And for me, and my reason a little different. This is really a different kind of performance paradigm. It's no longer really what you would consider modern dance or whatever, ballet, whatever you're doing. It's something else, because performers now performing in a different way than they have before. Performers and movers have never really been able to control the sound with that much, or the composition or the lighting or anything with that much control before. So you really can't look at it through the eyes of an existing performance paradigm. You really have to open your mind up to something else. And the concept of exploring that new area and what is that paradigm, what are the potentials of it, how far can it go,
Where, which has many more variables, and what he's doing is learning how to play the instrument. And that it really, ultimately, artistic creations will depend on the talent of the performer and their vision, and it won't be, I don't perceive it as, I see it as a new instrument, but not a very different paradigm.
Yeah, I think that's right. It's basically, it is an instrument. It's not. It's a different paradigm than learning. I think this is just an instrument.
There it goes.
Well,
Harris.
We're supposed to.
The pleasure for that topic is yours.
Certainly was a pleasure for me too, and a privilege.
Thank you so much. Cut. All right.
this event PBS.
Okay, this is a dance studio in the main building, and that's the piano, grand piano. These are just pads around the walls. And this is their sound rack, which is permanently positioned on the floor. And they consist of two Yamaha speakers at the top, a single cassette deck, a single CD player, Yamaha, and the bottom is a Yamaha stereo amplifier. They're bolted to the wood shelving, locked into the cage here. And it's on the side of the wall in the corner, can't be moved. They have two Serwin Vega speakers suspended from the ceiling. They have a white backdrop, curtains across the back, also curtains across this front section here. No permanent seating. Mirrors along that wall only, from there to there. And that's it. And this is the extent of the PA system used for the event. Newcomb speaker built in 1910, it looks like. A Bogan amplifier. And a microphone cable suspended on the floor all the way out to there when they spoke.